The broadcast of It's Time with Reverend Nathaniel W. Martin. Here is Reverend Martin.
All right, thank you, Dr. Blackwell. Let me say Hotep Habaragani, even though Kwanzaa is completed, but the principles of Kwanzaa never die, and they can be utilized 24/7 and 365 days of the year. Let me say hello to my Africana Studies colleagues, contemporaries, and seekers after the truth all. Also, let me hasten to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, but certainly never good night, and never ever goodbye. My name is the Reverend Nathaniel Wayne Martin, and we thank God for you joining us this evening on our broadcast. Remember, this broadcast is a social justice broadcast, and it's not so much a preachy broadcast. Not that I have anything against preaching, because preaching is a spoken communication of divine truth to the public audience with a view to persuade, as my good friend, the Reverend Dr. Ross, so many times informed me, Robert W. Ross, and he learned that from Dr. Washington, who was the first president of Reed College here in Los Angeles. So I'm very much down with my brethren and with the preaching. And so it's not, but this is not so much a preachy in that order, or in that dimension, let's put it that way. But what we are trying to do is more or less to alert you to some issues, or one issue. We're going to try to talk today about the Department of Education and what's going to happen when Trump shuts it down. But before we get into that, let us turn to the scriptures. Luke chapter 12, Luke chapter 12, first verse. Last clause of that first verse, which is Jesus talking, saying, "Beware of the leaven of the Pharisees, which is hypocrisy." And please believe me, we are in the land of hypocrisy right now. Someone says, put your boots on, because you're wading through so much of awful with an O that you need some high boots to keep getting stuff on your feet and your legs. And the other scripture that we are going to emphasize is the familiar scripture in Ephesians chapter 6, picking up the reading at verse 11 and verse 12. All right, and verse 11 says, "Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil." And the 12th verse, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places." And please believe me, we are wrestling against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. And just because the fella is not in the seat, talking about Elon Musk, with all those billions that he controls or has access to, don't think that he is not doing his best to wring everything out of the current administration that he can to help himself. And it is an insult for Mr. Elon Musk to say that he's rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse when he himself represents waste, fraud, and abuse. And every program that he can get this government to give him or to sign over to him, as he did on this most recent $300 million contract that he was able to wrangle from the government. And not only that one, but the one that he's clawing back from Verizon, which was a $2 billion contract, but that is now going to go to him to upgrade the communications for the federal government. I thought he was trying to cut out wage fraud and abuse, but it looks to me like he's doing everything that can augment his finances. And so, talk about hypocrisy, as Jesus said. We are looking at hypocrisy personified in this current administration. And don't think for a minute that this affront that President Donald John Trump is exhibiting, where he says everybody that's against him is against law and order, and he's going to impeach a judge who disagrees with him. If you buy that, I got a bridge I want to sell you. He claims he's rooting out DEI, but every time I look at him, I'm looking at DEI personified. But let me not get myself too worked up. Let's go to the Department of Energy. My opening statement, let me get this straight here. All right. There has long been a tension between those who want to use the federal government as a mechanism for enforcing civil rights and those who don't. There is another tension between those who want local control of education and perception of federal overreach. Now, I read that because of the fact that in dismantling the Department of Education, Donald Trump is going after one thing, basically to hurt the poor, and especially to hurt the blacks, to turn back our advances that we have made. They don't want no more Martin Luther King Jr.'s highly educated young man. They don't want no more Huey P. Newtons or even Kamala Harris's or Ella Baker or Diane Nash's or any of those heroines and heroes of the past who have advanced people. Not to mention lawyers like Constance Baker Motley, whom we don't talk about enough, or Shirley Chisholm, who had the sense enough to run for president when a woman running for president was unheard of. But we thank God for those. But the system does not want to produce any more people with those type of credentials, with that type of academic scholarship that can, with that aptitude, let's put it in shorthand. And so they are going after the Department of Education. Remember, from Jump Street, this country was founded on the fact of it was a crime to teach a black person, well at that time a slave, enslaved persons, to read, male or female. And so this country has always been against education for the black people, slaved or not slaved, free or not free. They didn't want you to be educated. And you can look at a lot of the Karen incidents that we see on the YouTube, and we know that the source of that is their resentment that a black person has achieved or has attained a position or is in a position that a white person thinks that should be reserved for white supremacy. And so that is why you see these these outlandish manifestations of bigotry. Yes, I call it bigotry. That's what it is. And against prominent or even not so prominent blacks who are pushing themselves up into achievements that other small-minded white people think that they should be reserved for them. They just don't want to see you get coming up. But you got to keep coming on up anyway. The Department of Education was started by the late President Jimmy Carter in 1978. It was elevated to a cabinet level position under Carter. That's what Donald Trump and his ilk are trying to gut the Department of Education because it has been a blessing to too many black people coming up through the years. We were able to get a reasonable education and then excel. As we said, you always have to be 3 times as good to get half as much. And our people have had to do that. The Department of Education is a federal program, and if Trump and his ilk have their way, it will soon not be a federal program, because remember, under federal program, a school board or education department cannot discriminate against black people or against the poor if they're taking federal funds, because the federal funds are mandated that you must provide an equal, put a pen in that word, equal education, access to an equal educational opportunity to every individual, male or female, white or otherwise, white or non-white. You are to provide an equal opportunity. Remember that Brown v. Board of Education was argued to overturn that separate but equal doctrine that the government had operated under since Plessy v. Ferguson had been passed in 1896. And the Warren Court surmised and concluded that in the United States, separate was inherently unequal, because Alabama, Mississippi, and the states, and none of those, Virginia especially, Lord have mercy, none of those states were going to spend their money equally to educate black children at the same rate that they were going to educate their own. As a matter of fact, there was as much prejudice and racism practiced back in the North, in New York and New Jersey and Boston, Massachusetts, and all across the state of Virginia. Remember, Virginia was a secessionist state, a slaveholding state, and they did everything they can to restrain themselves from having to spend money on black people. The white schools got new buses, but the black schools didn't get new buses. Black schools, you had to walk to school. As a matter of fact, the case that became Brown v. Board, which was the case that came up out of Prince Edward County in Virginia, was brought about because of that inequality that was being visited upon the schools educating blacks, as opposed to the institutions and the campuses that were educating the white students. And this was in the elementary and secondary level. Elementary and secondary. And so the the school board, Board of Education, and the superintendent at that time had been putting off starting the purchase of land and starting to build a school for the black children. So a young lady named Barbara Johns, who was the niece of that Vernon Johns, who had been the pastor of Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, where Dr. Martin Luther King succeeded him. Yes, that Vernon John, Barbara Johns had got together with the students, 450 students, and the teachers and the faculty. And they said, we're not going to put up with this no more. For example, the school board, rather than build them a cement and brick building, had put up some framework, some wood frame structures, and covered them with tar paper, and told the black students, said, well, this is your new school. And the black kids said, no, we ain't got no heat in there, ain't got no cafeteria, ain't got no library, ain't got no gymnasium. We only got one microscope for the science class. And whereas the white school had all of the amenities. And so the black students said, we're walking out. Remember, this is Barbara Johns. And she was only, I think, 14 or 15 years old at that time. But she had enough sense to know that she was being undereducated and underfunded. And so she led this protest march, this strike rather, and they said, we're not going to go to school under these conditions. And naturally this upset the school board and the status quo and all of that, because they didn't want that type of uproar or furor coming about just at that right time. And Barbara Johns had written a letter to the NAACP saying, we want y'all to come down here and help us. We hate to disturb you, but we need some help down here. And if you come down here, we're going to support you, and we're going to get our parents. And so Spotswood Robinson and Oliver Hill, on their way to Pulaski County, thinking that they would just do a quick stop in Prince Edward County, found those children energetic, on fire, pushing, ready to overthrow that school system down there because they were getting a substandard education. And thus you can see the genus of Brown v. Board. Now, Prince Edward County was not a part of Brown v. Board originally, but Prince Edward County was the suit was filed in 1951, and then of course it got consolidated with the Brown v. Board cases, and worked their way through the Supreme Court and through the Supreme Court, and even after they won, they won in 1954, then it was reheard in 1955, then in 1959 with the mandate from the Supreme Court that says you must provide equal education to everybody, they closed the school rather than let the black children go to school with the white children. What they did was they created what you call segregation academies, which was white only, and the white students could go to the segregation academy, and the black kids couldn't go to school at all. So that means they fell behind. Not only in Prince Edward County up there in Virginia, but also in Little Rock, Arkansas. They closed all them schools rather than integrate. and where the public pool was, when the federal government said you got to integrate that public school, they filled that public swimming pool with cement, rather than let the black kids swim in there with the white kids. That's how ingrained, that's how full of vitriol, that's how bigoted and prejudiced the whites were against the black students. They did not want the black students to get an education. They did not want the black students to go to school with them. You can look at the story of Elizabeth Eckford, how the white folks treated her when she was going to school there, to integrate Central High School there in Little Rock, how the white folks was calling her the N-word and spitting on her pretty dress and all that kind of stuff. And she held her head high trying to get to the bus stop to get out of there. But the evil that the white folks, yes, the white folks, it wasn't the black folks that didn't want to be with the white folks. It was the white folks that did not want to share their tax money, their tax base, even though their tax base was the black people's tax base, but they wanted to deny the black people their share of that tax base that dealt with education. And so it is even today under Donald John Trump. And since Mr. Trump has been elected, he is signing executive orders to dismantle the Department of Education, which was started, as we said, under a Democrat, the late Jimmy Carter, James Earl Carter, who was recently laid to rest. And a little side note, you remember Michelle Obama didn't go to Jimmy Carter's funeral because she would have to sit beside Donald Trump. And you know Donald Trump is a touchy-feely guy. And Michelle Obama didn't come to Jimmy Carter's funeral out of the fact that she would have to sit beside Donald Trump. But I throw that in as an aside. But back to the Department of Education, as you said, the federal funds, which includes elementary and secondary. Secondary includes your high colleges and universities, and that's where your Pell Grants come in. And let me read this from Jimmy Carter. He says, I propose to improve Title I of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, which provides supplemental education services to economically disadvantaged children. Now, who can be mad at that but somebody that don't want to educate children? And so things have come a cropper as they do. And now the Department of Education is being destroyed. President Carter said, let us focus on federal educational policy at the highest levels of our government. What's wrong with that? And remember, the purpose of the federal government getting involved in education was to strengthen the commitment to ensure access to equal educational opportunity to every individual. Well, there are those bigots who do not want to have equal access to educational opportunity to every individual. Guess who they are? It's not me. I remember when we were kids growing up, we had to drive past the white school, which was a newer school, and we had to drive all the way to Studewood Heights. And we lived over in Central Garden, which is out by the Hempstead Highway at that time. It's 290 now. But we couldn't go to the white school, which was in our neighborhood, because it was white school and things were segregated. And so they have built a new school in Houston, which we had to go to, which is called Booker T. Washington Junior Senior High School, which had originally been over in another part of the city but the bigots in Houston, in order to stem the criticism that was leveled against Prince Edward County, went on and built a new school in Houston and named it after the black educator Booker T. Washington. And that is where we went. 5 minutes. All right. 5 minutes. And so, but we drove past. We had to drive about 10 or 12 miles to get to a place where they would let us have good education. And so you can see the dilemma that we as black people have always had to deal with here in this country. Even when we were allowed to go to the white school, when integration became mandatory and necessary. Remember, the schools back north never did integrate. It's just as segregated now in New York or Boston, Massachusetts, as it has ever been. And now with the resegregation all over the South. But they were much more cunning back north because they had what you call housing segregation before they had school segregation. In other words, they would not allow the black people to buy into white neighborhoods. So quite naturally, the neighborhoods that were lily white, that's where the best schools are. Whereas the neighborhood where the black people were forced to, mind you, forced to live, then they had inferior, what they call public school. Public school, number such and such. That's the way they did that back north. Remember, there were exceptions. Mrs. Her name escapes me last name. Last name is Williams. But she refused to believe that black children could not be educated, and she started a private school of her own and educated a bunch of black kids. They had them kids reading Shakespeare and explaining Shakespeare and summarizing Shakespeare and evaluating Shakespeare, analyzing Shakespeare, proving that the teachers in the public schools just did not want to educate black children. But I got to wrap this up now. But our people have always excelled, and our school teachers, our school principals have bent over backwards to make sure that we got not only a quality education, but an exceptional education. They really poured themselves into us as students. I was in the last segregated class coming out of Booker T. Washington. That fall, they started integration, and the schools have not been the same since. So, so in some ways, we got access to the facilities, but then the white teachers would not teach us at the level and the quality of the black teachers. And so as I wrap this thing up, I pray God's blessing upon you, and let us keep fighting the good fight, because we can't quit just because Donald Trump is going to destroy the Department of Education or gut the Department of Education. We didn't come this far to turn around, and God ain't bring us this far to leave us now. So let us not quit the battlefield. I'm at 77 years old, but I'm still planning to fight, and I want you to fight. And believe me, the God that brought you safe thus far is the same God that will lead you on, all right? And as I'm closing out, if you're working on a job, they don't want to pay you, take my advice, take my considerate advice. Don't waste your life living paycheck to paycheck. If they don't want to pay you what you're worth, don't work for them. All right, thank you, Doc. We out of here. Love you. God bless you.
My good days. my bad days, yes they do. I just say thank you, Lord. Thank you.